Hello everyone, I'm Josh Garrett, and in today's video, we're going to be taking our first step into the world of programming by learning about JavaScript, one of the most widely used programming languages on the web. Whether you're building websites, creating apps, or working with servers, JavaScript is an essential skill to have in your toolkit. First things first, JavaScript is a programming language that lets you interact with web pages. It's what makes websites dynamic and interactive. If you've ever seen something like a button click and the page respond immediately, or a form that checks your input real time, that's JavaScript at work. You'll write JavaScript code in a text editor or a coding environment and run it usually in a browser, but sometimes in a terminal as well. But before we start coding, you need a coding environment. I've already made a video on how to set up Cursor, which is the coding environment I use. If you would like to see the video, click here. Anyway, today we're going to be covering the basics of JavaScript, starting with one of the most important concepts, yet the simplest one, variables. So let's dive in. Now let's talk about variables. A variable in JavaScript is like a storage box where we can keep information. For example, we might want to store someone's name or a number we'll use in calculations. In this example, we have two variables, name and age. The variable name stores the string John and age stores the number 25. You can think of variables as containers for your data. You can choose any name for your variable, but there are a few rules you need to follow. Variable names must start with a letter, an underscore, or a $sign. They can also contain numbers, but they can't start with a number. So let's take a look at some valid and invalid examples. As you can see, my name, $price, and underscore score are all valid names because they don't start with a number and they start with either a letter, a dollar, or underscore. Meanwhile, first place and hashtag color are both invalid, and if they are run, they will output an error. Now you might have noticed that words are required to be inside double quotes here, but numbers aren't. The reason for this is that there are different types of data types. In JavaScript, there are several different types of values that can be stored in variables. These are called data types. Let's quickly run through the most common types you'll encounter. First is strings. This is a string, which is a sequence of characters, usually stored inside double quotes, single quotes, or backticks. Now if you were to run this using console.log greeting, it would output this in the terminal. Second is numbers. This is a number and can either be an integer or floating point number. As you can see, numbers don't require double quotes, single quotes, or backticks. If you run them, this is how it will show up in the terminal. Third is booleans. This is a boolean which can only be true or false, and when you run it, this is how it shows up. Fourth is array. To declare an array, it's basically the same way you declare a variable, but you declare it inside square brackets, and in between each of these variables you add a comma. Now to run a array or to print one, we can do console.log colors and square bracket, and inside that we input the number of value we want. So for example, red is 0 here, green is 1, and blue is 2. Finally, we have objects. Objects are written like this, and to print them, you add console.log person.name or .age or .occupation. Now that you know what variables are and the different types you can use, let's talk about how to declare them. In JavaScript, we can use three keywords to declare variables: let, const, and var. Let and const are the most commonly used today, while var is an older syntax you might still encounter. Let's start with let. Let is used when you want to declare a variable whose value might change later on. For example, let score equal to 0. And to change it, all you have to do is score equal to 10. On the other hand, const is used when you want a variable whose value should not change after it's been set. If you try to change the value of a const variable, you'll get an error. For example, here, const pi equals to 3.14. But if you try to change it, for example, pi to 3, this will cause an error. And then there's var. You might still see var in older JavaScript code, but it's generally recommended to use let or const because they provide more predictable behavior. Finally, let's use a practical example using variables. Here's a small example using variables to store and display information and run them on a console or terminal. Here we use let to declare username, user age, and a student. After that, all we have to do is use console.log to print all of that. To add a variable to existing string, all you have to do is use the plus sign, like here. Now you know the basics of JavaScript variables, including how to declare them, the different data types, and when to use let, const, or var. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe for more JavaScript tutorials. Thanks for watching and happy coding.